Dear students, I'm excited to present to you a very strange, very famous poem by William Butler Yeats, an Irish fellow who not only experienced the Irish Revolution, but also World War I, and it led him to a very depressing and bleak view. This is written about 34 years or so before Lord of the Flies was written, and yet I find that the parallels to it are quite astonishing. Here's the poem in its entirety, and then we'll go back, fill in our blanks, and have you write a thesis statement about it. The Second Coming. Turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart. The center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. Surely some revelation is at hand. Surely the second coming is at hand. The second coming. Hardly are those words out when a vast image out of Spiritus Mundi troubles my sight. A waste of desert sand. A shape with lion body and the head of a man, a gaze blank and pitiless as the sun, is moving its slow thighs, while all about it wind shadows of the indignant desert birds. The darkness drops again, but now I know that 20 centuries of stony sleep were vexed to nightmare by a rocking cradle. And what, rough beast, its hour come round at last, slouches towards Bethlehem to be born. I know, trippy, right? Crazy. So what the heck is all this about? We have this image of Bethlehem from the Bible, where the Christ child was born, and all of this talk about second coming. Up in this box, I'd like you to write that all of that serves as a biblical allusion, to remind you of the word illusion, in particular of the book of Revelations, where the world just gets dark and crazy and horrible, and then it's prophesied that Christ will appear again and save everything. Okay? First line, turning and turning in the widening gyre. Yeats was kind of a funny guy. He had his own set of symbols that he liked to use repeatedly, and one of them was this idea of a gyre. In a lot of ways, it's just a spiral, slinky-like. In this case, it's going up and around and up and around and up and around, getting bigger and bigger and bigger, like a tornado. Okay, so there's his image of a gyre. You can draw it just like that. And it's talking about one of those medieval falconers, or people that still hunt with falcons. You know, giant birds of prey you keep on your arm, and it's trained to respond to the calls of the falconer. And so imagine that you have a falconer. The falcon has taken off from the arm, and the falcon is flying up in a gyre, turning and turning in the widening gyre, but the falcon can no longer hear that falconer. He's becoming, so removed from the center that used to hold him together that he can't hear it, he's not getting the messages, things are indeed falling apart, okay? In a lot of ways, I think the falconer could represent all of the institutions that kind of held the world together before World War I hit with all of its devastation. The government, religion, solid family structures and such that were devastated and torn apart by that. And if you have all that as a solid anchor and a solid base, but now, because things are falling apart, the falcon are people, a lot of people, like the Lord of the Flies boys, people bent on devastation, they can no longer hear the call of all those institutions that used to hold things together. So this line, things fall apart, and the center, our rocks and our anchors, cannot hold. They're not holding people together anymore. Thus, mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed. Such Lord of the Flies parallels, right? It turns violent. It's like a tide, overwhelming, like the fire that spreads all over the island. Everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. Think of Simon. The ceremony, it's ritualistic, religious almost. Innocent like Simon, drowned. Think of how his dead body floated out to sea. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. And there I see how the best people on the island, like Ralph and Piggy and the twins, lack conviction They're good folks, but they don't have the conviction, the power, the intensity to get things done. And then the worst are just full of this passionate intensity. All those savage boys and Jack that are just doing violent things without a real cause, just having to do something with their mob mentality. So over here where it says the best lack all conviction means something like maybe good people exist, but are apathetic. They don't do anything. They don't have the oomph to get up and go and change things. And yet you have all these other peoples that are doing savage things with intensity, kind of, beating against the wall. So Yeats suggests that in such a situation, in the year 1920, wouldn't it be nice if we got help from a spiritual source? Wouldn't it be great if some revelation came? If the second coming came and fixed things, right? Salvation. The second coming, he's thinking about it, and then he says this, hardly are those words out when a vast image out of Spiritus Mundi troubles my sight. Now the Spiritus Mundi thing was Yeats' own weird invention. He had this idea that all human beings are connected unconsciously, and that there are symbols floating around in there that everybody responds to and everybody connects to. It's an odd idea. It actually comes from Carl Jung, and this idea that you have a collective unconsciousness. So Yeats called it the spirit of the world, this kind of unconscious that connects us all. Unconscious realm of symbols, nonverbal things that we all understand. And so he's thinking about the second coming, and then suddenly from this realm of unconscious symbols, this image appears, and it's a weird one. A waste of desert sand, a shape with lion body and the head of a man, a gaze blank and pitiless as the sun, have fun trying to draw the eyes of the thing, blank and pitiless, is moving its slow thighs, while all about it wind shadows of the indignant desert birds. Okay, so have fun making a little sketch. You're not going to be judged on artistic ability, I promise. But try and get those images in there from that section. And then I want you to notice that the image that you draw is then going to be surrounded by the shadows of indignant desert birds. Think of carrion birds like vultures, and they're spinning and winding, winding the shadows of these birds, which helps repeat the imagery of this falcon that's winding around aimlessly, not knowing what to do, not hearing the falconer anymore. Nice repetition of imagery. Okay, do me a favor right now. Here's Miss Thornbrew being Miss Thornbrew. If you've listened to me so far and have actually watched this video, not skip to the end, would you please right here in this spot, I want you to draw me a bunch of grapes. Yep, grapes. I want to see grapes right there. And again, that's just my check so that you guys don't skip my videos. And then have fun drawing that. You might want to pause the video, take care of that. And now let's finish her off. The darkness drops again, literally just meaning that his vision that he was having of that weird thing that you guys drew is gone now. Okay, I wanted people to notice the nice alliteration of darkness drops. Yeats was very sensitive to the sound of the language. And then look at this weird thing. But now I know that 20 centuries of stony sleep were vexed to nightmare by a rocking cradle. What the heck? Well, you see, there's this guy. Good thing we have a footnote, right? There's this guy from the late 1700s, early 1800s, and his name was William Blake. He was one of the first romantic poets who used the imagination in his art instead of being all intellectual like the Enlightenment era thinkers. And he was an odd guy. He had his own mythology, and it was odd, okay? So Yeats is alluding to him, and I better just read that to you because it says it just like it is. The phrase stony sleep is drawn from the mythology of William Blake. In Blake's poetry, a character named Urizen falls after being unable to bear the battle in heaven that he provoked. To ward off the wrath of his vengeful brother, he makes a rocky tomb for himself and goes to sleep. During this stony sleep, He goes through 7 ages of creation birth as a fallen man until he finally emerges out of the rock. Weird. Okay, Blake just invented that. He made himself a very creation mythology, weird, epic, crazy thing. Yeats takes that image and talks about how, okay, after 20 centuries of stony sleep, the world just sleeping and being weird and dark, all of a sudden they were woken up somehow, but woken up to a nightmare by a rocking cradle. Is that referring to the Christ child being born, the advent of Christianity? Subject to a lot of interpretation there. But now that Yeats is expecting a new second coming, he thinks is going to come, and yet it's not going to be a sweet little baby that preaches goodness and unity. And what rough beast, it's our come round at last. It's time for a second coming again, but we're not going to get a Christ child. What rough beast, it's our come round at last, slouches, what a great word, towards Bethlehem to be born. Whoa, nice bees. Okay, I understand that is a weird, odd, trippy poem. I would like you to go back and look at it and answer number 8, which is, you should be getting very familiar with this, what's a possible thesis statement? The author uses some stuff to get across a message. Multiple messages available. Give it your best shot to make it generic. Please leave out you and us to get across a message that, up to you. See how you do. Okay? All right, see you guys later. Bye-bye.